hasn't sparked more comment that a arms warehouse in Bulgaria exploded. Now, Bulgaria is a NATO country, an EU country, and obviously weapons from there have been shipped to Ukraine. So the arms depot is owned by a Bulgarian named Emilian Gebrev. Now he says that the GRU that's has tried to kill him before, that's Glavanya Razvedka Upravlenia, as in that's the Russian military intelligence, has tried to poison it with Novichok in 2015, but he survived. Um, and one of his warehouses in the Czech Republic suffered an explosion several years ago, which killed two security guards. So Mr. Gebrev said that this latest explosion in Bulgaria was 100% the work of Russian agents. Now, he hasn't provided any corroborative evidence for that. So I don't think his statement on its own can be probative. But, who would have the motive, the means, and the opportunity? Like any crime, cui bono? Well, obviously, Russia would gain from weapons destined for Ukraine being destroyed. Russia would gain from intimidating Bulgaria and other countries in the region from assisting the Ukrainians in defending themselves. Anyway, so Mr. Gebrev assures people that it's absolutely impossible, that this is an accident, because obviously a warehouse storing weapons, you want to be extremely careful that there are no explosions, there are no fires and things like that. So it's the fifth time in the last few years that explosions have occurred at facilities that Mr. Gibrev owns. So Bulgarian prosecutors have investigated. They previously said this is linked to Russia. Okay, it's not actually been proven in a trial. So it's all very worrying. And people were saying that this kind of thing was going to happen. Okay, if NATO countries neighboring Ukraine are providing weapons to Ukraine, then Russia's going to say, well, we're going to surreptitiously attack those countries and try and destroy these weapons before they get to Ukraine. So a red line has been crossed. And so far, NATO countries have only provided fairly short range weapons to the Ukrainians, like rockets for the HIMARS, which are going to be fired 70 kilometers. There are other rockets which will be fired 300 kilometers, but the United States and other NATO countries have fought shy of furnishing the Ukrainians with this for fear that would be too provocative. Now, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said a couple of weeks ago, this is a proxy war between NATO and Russia. And this is the one time that the devil speaks true. It is, because whilst NATO and Russia are not fighting each other directly, NATO is arming Russia's enemy. In the Vietnam conflict, the Soviet Union armed North Vietnam, which is fighting the United States. Or in Afghanistan, the United States armed the Mujahideen, which is fighting the Soviet Union. There are multiple examples of this. But what they didn't do is, as obviously NATO overall is arming Ukraine, what neither side was to cross that line of actually setting off a bomb in the territory of the other alliance. And so that's why there's got to be pushback, because the Russians are not going to stop. So NATO doesn't have to set off an explosion in Russia, but they can say, okay, we're going to up the ante now because you did it. We're going to provide the Ukrainians with those longer range missiles, and we're going to say, if you want to fire them into Russia, go ahead. We won't stop you. You can hit arms depots deep inside Russia, blow up their tunnels, their bridges, and so on, make the logistics of war impossible. And war is often decided by rather mundane things, as in who can ship the most weaponry in the shortest time. It's often logistics. They say, what is it? Amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics. An army marches on its stomach and all that. So the Bulgarian prosecutors have already determined it's a reasonable assumption that the explosions at Emilian Gebrev's facilities and the attempt to poison him and his son are the work of the Russian state. So yeah, Bellingcat, this open source investigatory organization, has demonstrated how GRU agents were in Bulgaria several years ago when Gebrev was almost killed by poisoning. So I think something's got to be done about it, because unless they pay a price, Putin's going to recognize, hey, this is worth it. I might as well continue doing it. Yeah, so his company's been supplying the Ukraine for some years like this. Now, why hasn't there been more talk about NATO countries? Why not more outrage at this act of terrorism? It's unlawful violence in furtherance of a political objective. If Russia were to declare war on Bulgaria, okay, it would be lawful, but they haven't. Now, admittedly, they're the only ones who commit unlawful violence. I suppose because then the impetus would be to hit back, and Joe Biden is circumspect. He doesn't want to escalate this, and he thinks that would have an escalatory effect. but I mean, it's already been escalated by Russia anyway, and they respect strength, not weakness. And I was reassured by various experts on Russia saying Putin's bad, not mad. Yes, he's very evil, but he's not insane. Talking about a nuclear exchange, trying to intimidate the world, getting Lukashenko, Sergei Lavrov, and others, because he knows he's not doing well conventionally. But would Russia come out of a nuclear exchange better than it went in? No, it wouldn't. Russia would at least be Russia. I know it'd be terrible for Western countries too. Russia could be easily wiped out. 145 million people against however many hundreds of millions in all the NATO countries, spread over a much larger area. And obviously, Russia's economy is extremely dominated by two cities, extremely centralized. Um, anyway, it's a worrying sign, and it's not going to be the last time they do this. Partly because there's very little pushback, but relations have soured between Bulgaria and Russia. Just today, 14 Bulgarian diplomats have been expelled by the Russian Federation, and no doubt there'll be a tit for tat. Bulgarians will declare Russian diplomats persona non grata in their country, short of breaking off diplomatic relations. So there's been this war of words. It's particularly galling for Russia that they managed to fall out with Bulgaria because, of course, Bulgaria is a Slavonic country. It's an Orthodox Christian country. It was a former Soviet satellite state. It was the only Eastern European country where in the Cold War they seriously pondered whether they might accede to the Soviet Union as a Soviet Socialist Republic. But in fact, that didn't transpire. So it hurts Russia to see that Bulgaria really has westernized, is a European Union member state, and is part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It shows just how unavailing Russia's diplomatic efforts have been over the last 30 years, how it's really got nothing attractive to offer by comparison to what the United States, the EU, NATO can offer economically, politically, culturally, all the rest of it. And culture is as important as anything. They say, the Cold War to some extent was won by blue jeans and Elvis Presley and Hollywood and things like that, which was just far more alluring than any of the culture or consumer products, music, films, whatever, fashion that the Soviet Union could produce. And it's hard to believe that actually was a Soviet fashion industry. Very limited there was. Some films have come out about that. So I think there's this pusillanimity on the part of the West. I don't want a nuclear war more than anybody else. I would like this war to end now with unconditional Russian withdrawal, recognition of war guilt, paying compensation to Ukraine and things like that. Russia to be defanged, to give up its nuclear weapons, to end the CSTO. But I don't think any of that's likely to happen. But at least some of it could happen. That would definitely be a step forward because there are more victims on the table if Russia is not deterred. I mean, the former president Dmitry Medvedev, he was saying on Telegram, the social messaging app, that the Kazakhstan's an illegitimate state, has got no right to exist, and things like that. Some ethnic Russians in Kazakhstan have been false accusing Kazakhstan of genocide against them, and it's all very, very troubling. So if Russia gets away with this crime against humanity in Ukraine, it'll invade Moldova, Georgia, Kazakhstan. Would it even try a NATO state like Lithuania? We shall see. Right, thank you for watching. So check out my Patreon account. Look at my website, George from Ireland. Please donate to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. Bye.